we can still say Liverpool are the most successful club in British football history. We might still be able to say it, even if they get one more title than us, because we've won the European.
Yeah, you've got two.
We've got 5.
Oh, 5, of course.
We've got 5.
So how do you feel upon leaving the political arena?
Well, obviously I've got mixed feelings about it, but I think I've been very lucky. I've had a very good run. 27 years is a long time, and I think I've done my bit, and it's time to move on. And I think it's much better to leave when quite a few people are kind enough to say, we wish you weren't going, instead of waiting until people start saying the old saying, so should have gone years ago.
What do you remember as being your greatest triumphs in politics? What do you really feel proud of doing?
Well, nationally, I suppose there are a number of things, really. I'm quite proud of the things that I did in most of the jobs that I did. When I was Employment Secretary, I finally put an end to the closed shop, which had stopped people getting work unless they were members of the trade union very often. When I was Environment Secretary, I managed to persuade the American government, the administration of George Bush Sr., to sign the Climate Change Convention and go to the Earth Summit in Rio, which was the Climate Change Convention was the forerunner of the Kyoto Protocol and the first major agreement on climate change. And when I was Home Secretary, we managed to, together with the police and many others, all working hard together, we managed to achieve the first major crime reduction, 18% fall over the 4 years I was there, that there had ever really been. So I'm quite proud of all those things, and proud also, I suppose, of the fact that I was elected leader of the opposition, and we made some progress at the last election, but obviously not as much as I'd have liked. There are countless things locally, going back quite a long time. I saved the Folkestone Magistrates Court, led a great campaign when the government was proposing to close it down. What a mistake that would have been. The minor injuries unit at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Folkestone. More recently, a couple of schools which were threatened with closure. Lots of things over the years. I suppose my biggest regret of all is that I didn't do better at the last election, and that I didn't win that election, because I know that I would have done things differently, and I think the country would have benefited as a consequence, but wasn't to be.
We've now got all the political debates on television. Would you have liked the chance to have taken on your opponents?
Very much so. I did challenge Tony Blair to a televised debate, and of course he thought he was far enough in the polls, far enough ahead in the polls to be able to say no. But I would have loved to have had a television debate. Yes, absolutely. Tony Blair, I think, will be remembered as someone who squandered an enormous opportunity. When he became Prime Minister in 1997, he had everything going for him. Huge majority, a benign economy, terrific public support, a real desire for reform. And I think I don't think he ever really got to grips with how government works. And as a consequence, I think he really failed to deliver, and I think he was a great disappointment.
Would you have liked to have done more at the time of the Iraq War to oppose the invasion?
Not really. My view about the Iraq War is that it was a good thing to get rid of Saddam Hussein, and if the aftermath had been planned properly, something we were calling for at the time, the whole thing might have turned out very differently. The trouble was that there were competing views in Washington. Colin Powell in the State Department had a plan which would have made a huge difference. Donald Rumsfeld, as Secretary of Defense, said you didn't really need any of that. And I think one of Tony Blair's great failings was that he didn't persuade George Bush to listen to Colin Powell rather than Donald Rumsfeld. And he had a lot of influence at that time, Tony Blair, but he never really used it. And I think that was a great pity. So what I would have done if I'd had any influence was to try and make sure that what Colin Powell was saying was listened to, and that the proper plan was put in place. I mean, so many mistakes were made, disbanding the Iraqi police, disbanding the army. They could have been used to deal with the insurgents, and that would have made a huge difference.
Away from the actual political arena, there are a couple of things which will, I guess, for good or bad, you'll always be remembered for. There's Anne Widdecombe's famous comment, something of the night about him. How did you take that, and how do you see it now?
Oh, well, you know, look, when you go into politics, you know that you've got to take the rough with the smooth. And, you know, that was part of the rough. And Anne Widdecombe and I had a real disagreement about Derek Lewis, who was head of the prison service, and I put in place an independent inquiry into what should happen to put the prison service to right, and I thought he had to go, and Anne disagreed with that, and that was the basis of our falling out.
There's also some famous sort of debates between you and Mr. Jeremy Paxman. How did you always feel about that when he would interrogate you and grill you? Did you ever feel intimidated, or was it just part of the cut and thrust of it?
Oh, I never felt intimidated, and there's only one interview we had, which everybody remembers, when he asked the same question lots of times, and he only asked the same question lots of times because the next person to be interviewed hadn't turned up, and so the producer kept telling him, keep asking the same question. I mean, it's not unusual for politicians to give an interviewer an answer which isn't quite the answer he wanted. He doesn't usually bang on 14 times or however many it was, but then I suppose usually the next person is ready to turn up and submit himself or herself to the questions.
A couple of local issues. How do you see the future of the Lydd Airport development?
Well, it's with the government now. They have to decide whether or not they need to call a public inquiry into it. I was persuaded that it would be in the interests of the area, for the benefit of the area. We need jobs on Romney Marsh. I think that the effect on the environment could be contained. Indeed, I think it's been exaggerated. So I think it would be a good thing if it goes ahead, and I hope it does.
And how about the proposed Dungeness C nuclear power station?
Well, I think that's really important, and I very much hope that that does go ahead. We need nuclear power. If we are to continue to be able to do the things we need to do without damaging the atmosphere and without contributing to global warming, I'm absolutely convinced that we need nuclear power. And I think a third nuclear power station at Dungeness can make a really significant contribution to that.
And lastly, what are you going to do now that you have retired from politics? Have you any immediate plans?
Well, I'm going to watch a lot more football and go racing more often, things I really enjoy doing, and I've got a few part-time jobs which will keep me reasonably busy, so I'm looking forward really to a new phase in my life. I doubt that I'll be able to go to Liverpool every couple of weeks, but I'll be watching them on television a lot, and I will go to Anfield from time to time. Yeah, I managed to get there a couple of times this season, and I hope to continue to do that.
Any plans to pen a long memoir?
No, I don't really think so, because actually you only get a decent amount of money for your memoirs if you're prepared to dish the dirt on your former colleagues, and I've no interest in doing that, so I don't think many publishers would really be interested in my memoirs.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.